But why does Italy give away its military ships around the world? Have you ever wondered about that? Well, actually, there's a way to answer that with two recent cases and two ships in particular. The ship Libra and the ship Garibaldi, one given to Albania and one to Indonesia. Let's start with the closest country, Albania. In recent hours, an agreement between the Italian company Fincantieri and the Albanian company Caio has laid the foundation for the creation of a new joint venture dedicated to the construction and maintenance of naval units in Albania. Caio is a company involved in the development of strategic infrastructure and is controlled by the Albanian Ministry of Defense. The new entity will be 51% owned by the Italian group and 49% by the local partner. The initiative was created to operate both in the Albanian domestic market and internationally, and it will bring jobs not only to industries but also to the local area. The joint venture will be responsible for building and maintaining ships for the Albanian fleet, while also pursuing business opportunities abroad. In the national context, the joint venture will act as the main contractor for naval programs, directly managing the execution of orders and coordinating supplies. Meanwhile, on the international level, Fincantieri will continue to maintain the role of prime contractor for naval units with a length of less than 80 meters. For these activities, the site selected as the main production hub is the shipyard that I am showing you in these images, located near Valuna. The goal is to transform the facility into a modern and efficient industrial infrastructure, excuse the play on words, capable of meeting the required needs. The industrial plan includes the acquisition of about 10 naval units in the period from 2026 to 2030. Okay, but what does all this have to do with a gift from Italy? Well, let's get to that step by step. In fact, we know that Italy is building relations with Albania through operations that I won't comment on since it's not my field. These were strongly desired by Prime Minister Meloni, who has a good relationship with the Prime Minister of Albania, Edi Rama. And this is where we start to see some interesting similarities between the Garibaldi case and the Libra case. Let me refresh your memory. In 2025, while the groundwork was being laid for the industrial agreements I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Italy transferred the Libra patrol vessel, which belongs to the Cassiopeia class, to Albania free of charge. This vessel had been placed in reserve in the early months of 2025 and was no longer in operational service. The Libra patrol vessel is part of a class of ships built between the late 1980s and the early 1990s. After more than 30 years of service, these ships show a natural deterioration of their structures and a technological gap compared to current standards. Now, from a technical point of view, this ship is by no means a crown jewel for the Italian Navy, but for the Albanian fleet, the Libra will be one of the most important ships in its ranks, if not the most important. This transfer, as we read on the Parliament's website, is part of a broader framework of bilateral cooperation in the defense sector, aimed at strengthening the dialogue between the two countries and supporting the development of Albanian military capabilities, as well as promoting the interaction of the national industry with these countries, which, translated from bureaucratic language, means that we are not doing this just for sentimental reasons. In fact, it has a purpose, especially since we are talking about Giorgia Meloni. But there are objectives we want to pursue at the industrial cooperation level. To be honest, it must be said that at the time, for the Libra ship, some opposition members of parliament protested, accusing the government of giving away a military ship worth about 3.8 million euros, which could still operate for several years, to Albania. And the reflagging was particularly criticized, which would have cost over 1.5 million. So, to try to summarize, we have the military ship Libra, which Italy was no longer using, transferred free of charge to a country to promote strategic and industrial relations, which, as we've seen, is happening with Fincantieri. The operation was then followed by controversy and requests for clarification. Does that remind you of anything? Now, let's move on to another ship, Garibaldi, another case to connect the dots. Before we continue, speaking of free transfers, I ask you to give a like and share this video and leave a free comment. If you like what we do, consider a subscription. A coffee a month helps us improve the technical section here. Thank you very much. We saw the Libra case. Now, around the same time, Parliament has finally closed the issue regarding the free transfer of the Garibaldi to Indonesia. A ship and a country that carries different weight from Albania, if only because of its size, but still shows many similarities. As you know, Italy has been maintaining relations with Indonesia for some time, with contracts related to the sale of ships and military platforms. More generally, these are bringing several orders to the Italian national industry. Chiara Rossi in Star magazine reminds us, for example, that Indonesia might purchase 6 submarines produced by DRAS for 480 million euros, 24 M346 training aircraft from Leonardo for about 600 million, and 3 patrol aircraft for 450 million euros. The Garibaldi, like the Libra, had been put in reserve for some time as it is considered too obsolete. A modernization was not considered because it was not cost-effective. At this point you might be wondering, but why if the Garibaldi is too old, too obsolete? For Italy? For Indonesia, on the other hand, the Garibaldi would be useful. It would be the first ship of this type in service with the Indonesian fleet. And so this would be very useful for gaining experience. We're talking about naval air operations and also considering the geography of the region. In Indonesia, con tutte le sue varie isole. It would be a crucial ship in the event of natural disasters. Another very important issue is how much it costs us to keep the Garibaldi idle. We're talking about 5 million a year for services like electricity and security, while a possible demolition would cost around 18 million euros. For a long time, there was talk of reusing it as a museum ship or for launching rockets into orbit, but neither proposal ever led to anything concrete. For this hull, which currently has an estimated value of 54 million euros. As in the Libra case, the opposition did its job here too, pointing the finger this time at the Minister of Defense, Guido Crosetto. According to some members of parliament and newspapers, he may have a conflict of interest because he allegedly has ties, again according to political accusations, with the company DRAS, which is one of the companies benefiting from the agreements Italy is making with Indonesia. So, bringing it full circle and looking at both cases, we have the free transfer of 2 ships no longer used by Italy in exchange for industrial agreements. And this is significant because, as we've seen in Albania, we're establishing a shipbuilding foothold in the country, while in Indonesia, we're also the ones benefiting with contracts that, when added up, are worth about 1.5 billion. So yes, this is the answer to the question at the beginning of the video. In my humble opinion, and I'm nobody, if it's in exchange for some platforms we no longer use, then this is the price to pay. Well, honestly, I'm quite happy that they're taking them. Agreements? Maybe you can tell me what you think about it? Obviously, as I say every time, if it turns out that some politician got a little something, let's call it that. From these developments, we'll be among those channels that will talk to you about it, but as of today, that's not the case. That's all for today. One of the comments I expect to see below the video. It's probably in reference to the fact that the ship could be sold to a third-party company for material recycling. Well, there are already historical cases that have shown this is a possibility, but in the end it may not happen. Meanwhile, maintaining the ship takes even longer, adding more burdens for us. Sources in the first comment. For more details, see you soon on Gens Italia.